I want to talk about your piece and also talk about the war in its larger context. I must say, though, the video that we're seeing of 8 Ukrainian men just being taken across the street to be gunned down, one story, one war crime after another war crime. I must say, I can't believe I guess it shouldn't be surprising, but it is still so shocking how barbaric these Russian troops under the guidance of Vladimir Putin are. Just barbaric.
There's no serious commander control. A lot of these guys are out pretty much freelancing it. And even if they were under stricter Russian control, the orders have been to subjugate and pacify these areas. And the Russians only know one way to do that, which is to go in and kill people who resist them and kill people who don't resist them as examples to others. I mean, this is really, this is World War II kind of stuff. That they're putting into effect here, and there's a certain amount of rage as well that somehow these people did not greet them as liberators, and that therefore they are somehow traitors or people who need to be singled out for punishment, including some of the Russian speakers who have been singled out because, of course, they were supposed to be happier than anyone to see the Russians, but this is the Russian pattern, and there's no reason to think it's going to stop.
No, it's what they did in Chechnya. It's what they did in Syria, obviously in Aleppo. It's what they keep doing. It's what Vladimir Putin does. So it has seemed that Putin has been oblivious to reason, to logic, to outside information, to truth. But you believe that Putin may be reassessing his situation. Tell us why.
I'm not sure if Putin is reassessing or if someone is reassessing inside the Kremlin. There are 3 things that made me wonder what's going on inside Moscow and inside a very small part of Moscow behind those Kremlin walls. One of them was this kind of somber and downbeat Victory Day speech, where a lot of folks, including me, had real concerns that Putin was going to step forward and say, okay, now it's all out war. We're going to, because Russia still has unexpended capacity here. Russia could step up this war. Believe it or not, Joe, they could be even more brutal than they are and apply more force here. But instead, Putin sort of whined that he had no choice and that he had to act against NATO and kind of gave some of these laugh out loud explanations that even he doesn't believe. The second is that we now have high level military contacts opening up again, which kind of surprises me. The defense minister and the chief of the Russian general staff have been allowed to pick up the phone and talk to their American counterparts, which there's been silence on those lines despite repeated American efforts now for months. For some reason, in the past week, both the defense minister, Sergei Shoigu, and the chief of the Russian general staff, Valery Gerasimov, have both picked up the phone and had, perfunctory, but nonetheless, reestablishment of communications kind of discussions with their opposite numbers, with Lloyd Austin and Mark Milley. And the third thing is the appearance on Russian television of a retired Russian staff colonel named Khodryonok, who he is a trenchant and very somber critic of the war. He is not young. He's not an anti-war protester. He is this very kind of stoic and solid presence who warned Russia in February that they could lose this war, who now says, here's why we're losing. The whole world is against us. We have made a mistake here. He doesn't criticize Putin, but he talks about how
let me ask
this wasn't going to go better than it is.
Yeah, let me ask you, why did that happen? I was comparing this. I was trying to figure out why they allowed him on television, that didn't just happen. Somebody made the decision to let him on television. Hard to believe it would be Putin, but it reminded me of the old May Day parades where we were looking up at the Politburo, waving from the platform, trying to figure out who was in power, and sort of Kremlinologists would try to sort through what they were seeing. What's your best guess on why he was allowed to go on Russian television and pick this invasion apart piece by piece.
Yeah, I was one of those Kremlinologists, and I have the same question you do now. Whose idea was this? Who allowed him there? You know, when he first appeared, a lot of folks on social media kept asking me, well, is he going to get thrown out of a window? Is he going to drink poison tea? No. If he was on TV, it's because someone meant him to be there. And I don't, the least encouraging explanation is that he was put there so that the public could kind of vent with him to say, see, you know, there are responsible people looking at this, and our voices are being heard, this kind of managed dissent. I'm not sure that's the case. I think it may well be that either the Kremlin or the defense establishment in Russia, they may be trying to lower expectations about how this war is going to come out. They may be saying, you know, that the odds were just so against us that this march to Kiev that we had talked about isn't going to happen. It's also possible that somebody put him on there as a shot over Putin's bow to say, look, we tried it your way, and here's why it went bad, and we need to think about something else. Which of those explanations is true? I wish I could tell you I knew, Joe, but I don't.
Yeah, it's hard to say, and Mika, I will tell you this. Putin doesn't do managed dissent very well.
No.
So I'm not sure if it is managed dissent, but that is one explanation, one possible explanation.
Well, Isabel, I really appreciate your latest piece because it drills down and focuses in on the suffering of Ukrainians and a type of story that's happening thousands of times over in Ukraine. It's called In Ukraine, A Perilous Journey to Bury a 13-year-old Girl. And you write in part this: the story of how 13-year-old Sofia Rayetska's remains wound up here near battles with Russia in northeastern Ukraine and separated from any relative is the story of a war that can reach any Ukrainian. Sofia and her family had fled bombardment, but where they thought would be a safe place was soon occupied by Russian soldiers. When they tried to leave on May 4th, Russians fired on their vehicle. Ukrainian investigators say Sofia was dead at the scene. Her mother and 6-month-old sister were taken to a hospital back in the occupied territory with no way to get Sofia. The only relatives who could give Sofia a proper burial were more than 125 miles away, along a different part of the front line. Now, Kolodov, an ambulance driver, had volunteered to help her finish the journey. There are so many stories like this, he said, too many. And Isabel, give us a sense of sort of the overload of the suffering that is happening right now in Ukraine. I think sometimes we look at the military moves, but the Ukrainians daily are taking the brunt of this war.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a war that, you know, even if you live in a peaceful city, even if you live in Western Ukraine, because you tried to get away from the fighting or you fled there as an evacuee, a Russian missile strike can still hit you there. You're still within reach. This family, you know, they lived kind of close to the front line in the Donbass region. For the past 8 years where there was a conflict. They thought they went somewhere safe. You know, that's the place that ended up under Russian occupation. You know, when it got noisy there again, you know, and they couldn't stand being under Russian occupation anymore and wanted to run again, you know, their vehicle gets fired on by Russians as they're trying to get out of the occupied area. And, you know, after all of that, the funeral happens back along the other part of the front line, less than a mile away from kind of where Russian positions are. And kind of at the end of the funeral, there was shelling again, that their village was being targeted. It's split families, this war. It's people being displaced. It's, you know, obviously people losing family members. You know, the volunteers who transported this body said this is a pretty common situation where there's just no one to even claim the dead, and they have to help people grieve. That's such a big part of this. Is it's so hard for just Ukrainians to move on with their lives when they haven't even been able to grieve their loved ones because of just how much this war touches every one of them in so many ways.